First order of business is to approve the Zoom minutes from our prior meetings. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any nays?
Aye.
Are there any nays? And are there any abstentions? Hearing none, we have approved our prior minutes. So that can be shown for the record. And then sorry, my screen is doing some strange things. I'm really happy to see you all. I know it's been a very trying past couple of months for lots of folks, but we certainly wanted to make an effort for the board to both talk through and learn more about the work that the Department of Health has been leading to help our neighbors in the city respond and recover to the tornado. So, Kristen, would you like to open up this part of the meeting?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Happy Thursday. I hope you all have been doing well. In terms of tornado response, I'm sure many of you have, been involved in some capacity, even if that's just sharing resources, which is extremely important. I can talk a little bit about from what my experience has been and some of the organizations that I know that are out there that are doing some of the long-term care, transitioning from being emergency hubs. So we know on May 16th, the tornado swept through most of North City, St. Louis, impacting a lot of our city residents, which is critically important to us. I will say the day after the tornado, I was a part of a volunteer group with Dr. Marty Casey. And we actually, I think we found one of the first individuals that didn't survive the storm. A family came to us looking for a family member. And so we did a wellness check and we found him in his apartment. He was not, he had passed away. So it's been pretty intense since then. My husband and I also run a nonprofit called the Village Keeper. So we've been doing some frontline support, partnering with a lot of the main hubs that you've probably seen. The People's Response led by Action STL, as well as For the Culture. We've been there a few times to volunteer and or donate items. It was at STL Artworks off of Delmar, near Delmar Divine. That was run by Dr. Casey Martin and Miss Sabrina. That location has changed, and I think it's changing again. That was another site that we went to frequently. Fountain Park with Dr. Punch and the Brick, obviously, was one of the sites that we are continuing to support. They have a new initiative there called the 314 Oasis, where they're continuing extended care. And for the Ville, that is directly in the Ville, they were official distribution hub by the city government, led by Aaron Williams. And they are still doing some supportive work. They still have a warehouse that's a distribution warehouse to support other hubs that are still doing tornado relief. Again, I know a lot of organizations are transitioning to not the day-to-day of there's some that are doing you can pick up items, and there are others that are thinking more long-term of how do we support people from a sustainable perspective. I know that Invest STL has some resources out right now to help people with red stickers in certain neighborhoods. I can share that link with you all. I don't have it handy in the moment, and my computer is giving me a message that it wants to restart, so I'm nervous to touch anything. But I can send that resource out to you all if you're interested in sharing that with your networks. So another thing I want to say, the DAC, our nonprofit called the Village Keepers, we also participated in the DAC, the Disaster Assistance Center, that was led by city government, or it was part of the STL Recovers Initiative. It was a resource center with several supportive organizations. Took over parts of the arena where they had tables set up for people to get now support, from Heat Up, Cool Down, STL, Urban League, Affinia was there doing health screenings. I know I'm forgetting a lot of people, but it was a lot of resources, and we provided health resources in terms of just items that people can just take for free, with them. It was a beautiful thing. I'm glad that they did it. They provided rides to get there and back. I think that was running for the month of June. Of course, the Department of Health was there in presence as well, consistently. And the behavioral response team, I know I saw that table several times down there. So that has been my experience with it. Again, if there are resources that you all know of, and I think there could be some collective sharing amongst each of us to get more information out to the community. The only thing I do try to put on the front of folks' minds is the people that you're really trying to reach, unfortunately, are the people that aren't on social media all the time. So when we were doing wellness checks door to door, a lot of those people in the moment, they didn't have electricity and power lines were down. So they didn't have, a good phone service. Now I think some of them probably have been restored, but if you know any partners that do door to door, sharing the resources with them so they can directly tell community members is extremely impactful. I am going to kind of pause there because I feel like I've said a lot. We just woke up, so I don't want to bore you all. But if there was anyone else, I didn't want to just take the floor, but I know that there's been so many other people that have been involved in what they've been seeing at the university level, at the community level, at the department level. And so I see a couple of folks there from all of those spaces, and I want to open it up for anyone to share what they've seen, develop what they know of, any resources that we can share amongst each other so that we can at least continue to support our city residents in our charge as the board members. Dr. Shacham.
Ms. Shackham. Thanks, Kristen. It's good to see you guys. Thanks for all that hard work. Sorry. Thanks for all that hard work. I think the response has been tremendous, except my concern is the lack of systematic response. And actually, I think as the Board of Health, we're actually charged to focus on the systems that are responding, not the individual organizations or collective. Like, what can we as a collective advisory board guide the city or the Board of Health to respond? And I don't see lots of opportunities for that. Does anyone have insights on that?
I'm wondering, Shantae, if you're on the line, or Craig. I know, Shantae, you lead the community outreach, and Craig, I know you have a wealth of knowledge.
So go ahead, Shantae.
No, I didn't really have too much to add to, and I definitely understand and agree with your sentiments, Dr. Shacham. I think that's a bigger conversation. I think that's something that we need to flesh out with the support of the board and talk about those things that we can do. And I know I can say that much. Yeah.
Thanks.
So I was going to say that there is now an office in the mayor's office with Julian Dix, and he is charged with a lot of that. The EOC, the Emergency Operations Center, is still operational, but not on an everyday basis. I think it shows, just like COVID did, I think that there are a lot of people of goodwill. We have a lot of great folks who did provide and are providing great resources, but as you pointed out, Dr. Shacham, there are a lot of holes in terms of that system that once, for instance, the Department of Health was premier, and we're looking to try to regain that. I think the new administration didn't necessarily know all of the abilities, and that there is a plan, and that we could do that. That is not to in any way shortchange the fact that a lot of people have, saved lives, I think, frankly. One of the things, and I heard this last night, we had the policy person from the president's office and two of the alder people were at a meeting that I attended. And there's a great dearth of data that are available. For instance, the city does not know, or at least this person from the president's office and neither the alder people seem to know who in fact has applied with FEMA, who has obtained funding, what their specific needs are. There are a lot of people in organizations that are gathering some of that data in the community. And so there's an effort, and I don't know how they're going to try to wrangle this, but they have made a request to FEMA to try to get some of that information. They're probably going to have to do some data sharing agreements to get more of the specifics, as we might imagine. But those organizations that are collecting the data, I think there's ways to try to collect some of that together so that it's not disparate and it can do some good. One of the things that's helpful, there are still people who do not know. And I know that when the health department was going out there, Shante and I give him a doctor, Bo Richmond and Laura Leguess and the volunteers and employees of the health department, when they were going out there, we did have a QR code and we did have, the locations of the disaster recovery centers and how they could connect up immediately with FEMA. That is some of the most important information right now, and to let people know that if and when they are denied initially, that a lot of times it's that documentation piece. And if we can get some of that to people, it's helpful to do that. So that's my piece to say that we agree with it. I think a lot of things collided. Two new administrations, essentially, the comptroller and the mayor's office, along with the health department not, transitioning to whenever that new director is coming on board. I guess we're never prepared for an emergency, but we do have those systems and can improve those systems. And I know Shantae's been working diligently on some of that outreach piece, and you all with the Board of Health and the Outreach Committee can go a long way for that as well. Thank you.
Thanks.
I have a question. What I've been wondering is kind of what we as a collective board could do to help bring awareness or even advocate to the mayor in terms of filling different gaps. So the QR code and all of that was wonderful, right? But not necessarily accessible to all. And I have wondered, do we have a good understanding of the gaps that are still existing, some of the needs, and can we as a board really, propose some things even to the mayor of like, hey, we really need to get on top of these things? Just a general question. If there's no answer, that's okay.
No,
Just been on my
I think it's a great question. Craig, do you mind if I jump in?
No, it's
that-
your meeting.
Okay. Yeah, do you mind? I had an opportunity to talk to both the mayor and Governor Kehoe unexpectedly at one of the sites that I was at, and did charge several of the questions that you all are bringing up in terms of system response. There was a group of collective political advocacy organizations that were there as well that had a list of demands from community members in certain areas. Particularly, we were in Fountain Park that day, where we were able to articulate and allow community members to voice their concerns in terms of how the response has happened. I know a lot of those organizations that partnered with us. And again, this was an unexpected convening. We did not know that either of them were showing up to the site that day. However, these were people that had been spending time every day. They were out there trying to hear the voice of the people, and had a list of demands that they handed over to the mayor and the governor at that moment, as well as probably spent about a good 20-30 minutes just having a conversation around some of those same concerns. We've seen a lot of people self-deploy, where has been the systems response. To date, I do know one of our personal close friends and partner that runs for the Ville has been a part of a collective effort where they have several meetings with the mayor to try to streamline some of the choices that are being made on the ground, to try to, I'm trying to find my words, support the mayor's decision making and being responsive to community needs versus being responsive from a systems level, right? And I think that's one of the challenges as you, in this instance, you have to be boots on ground. You have to be in there with the city residents who have been most impacted, trying to assume or guess what they need from up here kind of always misses the mark in terms of being responsive in the moment. And as Inbal was mentioning, the lack of response and urgency initially is still a wave of harm that the city residents are experiencing, and probably has deepened the mistrust in city residents with their government officials, with their voted in officials to care about their lives in ways that make them feel safe, for lack of better words. So I think some of those things are happening. I think we can definitely still think about what our role is in terms of writing some official sort of statement to the office. I know that April has definitely been trying to get an opportunity for us to speak with the new administration. And I know they've been busy trying to manage all of the things. So we are still trying to figure that out and awaiting a response from their team. But all of the things you all are mentioning are things that we have been thinking about discussing to make sure that the presence feels full in this new administration. There's no more awkward time when transitions like this happen, especially when you have someone like Dr. Mahdi, who was very involved, exit a position, and then you have a lot of people that are concerned about what the new looks like. And so the tornado happened almost right along when the transition happened, which added a lot and inflamed the situation of, oh, well, where's the presence? Are we being seen? And does it matter if we even talk to city government? Like, will they even respond to us? So there have been some public hearings that they have been posting for people to be responsive about tornado response, which is why some of the things you've seen, I want to say, including the DAC, kind of came to be because members of the community came. So those opportunities are being posted constantly by city government, and we can do a better job of sharing that amongst the board because there's opportunities for us to show up and advocate for the people of the city as well.
Yeah, that's perfect. I would love if we had the opportunity to collectively show up as a united board in some kind of way, given the variety of spaces that we all exist in, and the variety of networks that we all have.
For sure. It was a great question.
I can't see everyone on screen. I know some of us are not on camera, but are there other members of the board that have questions or have some feedback about how they have either observed or seen or felt response from the city in the past 2 months?
I'll say this, and this is not a local, and this is more just what I'm thinking. So in my role, I work with people all across the country, and unfortunately, that means that I'm hearing about people directly impacted in Texas, right? They know people, or North Carolina, or Florida, right? We have a lot of natural disasters. What I'm noticing is some of the response seems very similar. So to that earlier comment on like really looking at our systems, I do still wonder, like, this is not an isolated thing, but is there a way to function a little bit more efficiently and effectively for folks? So that's also been on my mind. No additional comments on that needed, but just something that I've been thinking about over the last month or so.
No, that's such a good point, that responses that we see here mirror those that happen in other parts of the country, and responses are choices, and there is ample evidence to support more equitable response during natural disasters, emergencies of all types. So I think one of the questions was that Liz, you had just posed, was what is our role as the Board of Health in this work? And from my point of view, as with all the other work that the Department of Health does on a regular day, in addition, in this moment, to make sure that the Department of Health is heavily focused on what is most equitable in how it carries out its work, and what type of lessons are being learned, so that as another terrible incident happens again in the future, the most vulnerable people get the response and the service that they need in the moment.
And
I do.
you want to say?
I was just gonna ask about the state FEMA. What is that called? Craig. Sorry. There's
I'm sorry, it's
there-
called SEMA with an S.
yeah, yes, right. It's right, SEMA. So when Kehoe was there, Kristen put you on the spot. Did Kehoe talk about that at all?
You know, he did. And what he said, some of what I saw on social media, that there would be about 40 representatives that were going to show up the next day, but I did not see anybody show up. They did eventually come, but it was not in the timeline that we discussed. And again, some of the other political organizations that were there were really like laying the questions on, like, this is not about time of like needing to figure out. This is about an urgent emergency that community members are filling a gap for and are waiting for the officials with the authority to make moves to do so. I know there was discussion about the response in the past. I feel like it was it Megan Green that had mentioned and talked about the response years ago when there was a disaster across the nation, and how within 48 hours there were, over 800 people that responded to that from city government, that set up camp and did the things that community members are doing now. And I think this is definitely a moment of reflection of how our city responds to our most underserved populations, particularly because those who have been targeted the most are our Black community, who have inherited these homes that probably haven't been paying rent because they've owned the homes because it was their grandmother's homes and they were their parents' homes. A lot of people that I have talked to, some of them didn't have insurance. So a lot of the resources that are available, they don't qualify for.
Mm.
So they're still very much displaced. They are concerned about their land. They are concerned about, is that because we are having to, quote unquote, I wouldn't even say they're abandoning their home. They really don't have a choice, but it could be documented as home abandonment. And then someone else, like a developer, can come over and take over a property that, do you really own that? So there's been a lot of discussion around the protection of the people. And, Iqbal, you do have my wheels turning in terms of like, how can we articulate to city government in our stance what we've heard, what we understand, what we know from an equitable lens. It's like, hey, we know that you all are transitioning, and here's some things that we've noticed so far, and things that should be addressed. At least if we get that off our chest, whatever they choose to do will be their choice. But as a stance, as an advisory group, as you said, it is our job probably to say that out loud and boldly, that this is what we see. And this doesn't align with, what we've known historically of the representation of a city Department of Health. Because we have to care about those who have been exposed to so many different environmental triggers in this, bricks and dust and asbestos and tetanus. And I know that you all have been doing a great job on social media to bring awareness to that and partnering with FQHCs to address that. But I think there could be a more firm stance from us to Kara's office in terms of what we've seen. And then even with Victoria, who is interim at the moment, including her in the conversation, just so there's awareness. But yeah, I agree.
I just think that the beautiful work that the community has done, like all these people, boots on the ground, is like, that's phenomenal. And how do we operationalize that always? Because it's not fair to the communities to
I agree.
have this like Band-Aid approach. Like the systems exist for this type of thing, and they're not responding in a meaningful way, or yet. They're working on it, but that's maybe. We'll leave it as to be determined.
I agree with that. There's part of me, and this is totally a me thing, but I'm like, what is the action plan? What is the resolution timeline? Like, when will they have these new things even presented? I don't know, to the public, like, hey, this is how we'll address this next time. But that might be a bit of a lofty thing that I am looking to see. But I would hope that is occurring.
Yeah. Thanks.
Sorry, did someone have something to say? I was going to share that a couple of board bills recently passed, I think 44 and 45, regarding, and Craig, you can correct me, you're probably the most knowledgeable about these bills, but the point of at least one of the board bills was to register neighborhood associations that advocate for their neighborhoods and their residents. And the other was, I think, related to notices from the city that have to be posted with these neighborhood groups. So as we think about whose voices are being heard and how is city government hearing directly from people in these most, affected areas, my hope is that this is one of the ways that city government across the board can have a two-way, both got kind of a bi-directional way of speaking with people, but that I don't know it's passed, and I'm going to assume it's gotten to the mayor's desk. I don't know if it's been signed yet.
Yeah, I don't know that either. It's very interesting because I have in my hot hand right now a flyer that was handed out by Alderwoman Hubbard, who is the sponsor of those two bills. She was at that meeting last night. And this, of course, predated anything with regard to the tornado, and it kind of points out, the importance of systems. Many of us, I know, Shantae definitely is a believer in this, in terms of the significance of block units and families and organizations. So I think it's always in how these things are implemented, right? So this is an effort to kind of formally establish criteria, and don't ask me specifically what those criteria are, for recognition by the city of organizations as the people who represent those neighborhoods. As many of us know, there's lots of organizations that crop up, and the question is, so who is speaking for the neighborhood? And I always kind of get a twinge when we're asking government to recognize who those people are. On the other hand, there has to be a point where there's sort of those folks who are recognized in the community who would get notices of everything. So this says a clear process for neighborhoods to become officially recognized as registered neighborhood organizations, to require the city to notify them of things that are impacting their neighborhoods, such as liquor licenses and zoning changes, and to include them in city engagement efforts. It's not the only engagement means, it says, but it's one key and consistent point of input. So there's always this thing, right? So what we historically have done and what the law requires us to do is post some dinky sign on a lamppost someplace on that block, which is many times immediately taken down, so that neighborhoods don't necessarily know when these things are happening. in my mind, if we really wanted to be change agents, what we would do is we wouldn't have hearings during the day when most people are working many jobs or whatever, and we would have a system in place. So maybe this is the first step to that, for neighborhood organizations to really weigh in these things like conditional use hearings, variances, all these kind of things that change dramatically neighborhoods without the neighborhoods themselves knowing that it's happening. So this could be another tool within the tornado zone. I know that the Board of Aldermen and the mayor have talked about loosening some of the what is red tape for some and what is protective for others. It all just depends, right? But means of trying to make sure that we address those. So for instance, Alderwoman Hubbard talked about accessory uses like garages and whatnot, and the fact that many of our homes, if they were to be rebuilt today, would not necessarily meet zoning requirements and other kinds of occupancy requirements. And so having the neighborhoods officially recognized and getting them involved in that process is an important step. And that's what it seems that Board Bills 44 and 45 are designed to do. The way they're implemented will be important.
One thing that did dawn on me as you were speaking, is something that we were very active in terms of the RAND settlement and trying to get funding directly to the Department of Health for public health and expansion and retaining positions of that may have been impacted through government federal cuts. And I also remember us very strongly advocating for, like, well, we know that there's money available that's being discussed of how it should be spent and used to develop the city. And so there was a very strong stance that, like, should be zero question of where majority of that money is being utilized to restore North City St. Louis. I know one of the questions we were very firm about was how will, as the city plans redevelopment and renovating the areas that have been deeply impacted, is there a plan to, one, hear community voice was one thing that I was, as you're building, are you asking the people that were displaced what they imagine this area to look like since this is their homes? Two, what is your plan to ensure that these homes remain affordable for people that want to return to that area versus, gentrification, if you will, developing it into a space where, it's 3 times the price as it was before. I know there are strong plans to make sure that the city is an attractive place for people to be. And I want to be sure that our city residents aren't left out of the conversation or left out of the plans in terms of their property, their homes, and what that looks like as we reshape the city following the tornado. So I do know there has been some new advocacy making sure that the ramp settlement funds are directly distributed to city residents. And I'm not really sure, I don't know, Craig, we gonna call on you. I'm not really sure where that landed. I heard, I don't want to call it a rumor, but I heard buzzings around something around 30 million being allocated to certain supports. And I'm not really sure if that is still the same thing.
Yeah, so the 19 million that I talked about is part of the 34 million that's supposed to be from the interest payments and other kinds of funding. I think these same questions have been cycling around and people keep asking what the plan is. I think folks are wrestling with that. One of the questions from community last night, this was at Transform 314. That's where I was last night. So it's really a grassroots and working with Black and Brown community, and now specifically working in that tornado zone area and some of those kind of efforts. So there isn't really a plan. There haven't been any real great places where there's been great success stories. I'm trying to reach back and I'll look at my notes. Christine Garmendia from the President Board of Aldermen's office did talk about there was one thing that was very positive that she saw in one community, but many of the things are sort of lessons learned, just as we have here, that didn't necessarily work out the way intended. So what I understand is the 19 million right now, they have them in various buckets. I could tell you what those buckets are, and you can see them in the press. The mayor did announce them. So I see 5 million for home repair, 3.5 for case management, mental health, and legal, 2.5 million for resource hubs, meals and supplies, coolers and porta potties, 2.2 million for storage of items that people have. And then I want to remember there's something else they talked about last night. Rental assistance and temporary housing, 1 million for cooling stations and sprinklers, and 5 million for the nonprofits that have been serving in the resource hubs and distribution and staffing. So then, depending on which of these tend to be most heavily used, will determine where the rest of that funding goes, as I understand it. One of the things that I heard last night that some people would like to do is to figure out where they can take some of these bricks. So let's say that my house is a pile right now, but I want to rebuild and I'm trying to get funding and I'm trying to get my life together. Is there a place, rather than having others just sort of ship this stuff off, that I can take these building materials and store them temporarily so that I can use good building materials and add to those to rebuild? And so those are some of the things that they're talking about, some of the stuff that you're talking about, people are wrangling with right now.
Just to confirm, Craig, did you say it was 1 million for rental assistance? Was that what I heard?
Hold on, I don't think so. Repairs, case management, resource storage. Where did we put the rental? Temporary housing. Oh yeah, so 2.2 for storage, rental assistance, and temporary housing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. One of the things early was that FEMA was on the ground with neighborhood improvement specialists going door to door. The federal government pulled them away from that, put them into the other locations where they are now. So when you were talking about knowing, I think this was Liz Wright who talked about this, that is something that the city, at least portions of the city, are trying to figure out to get those data so that they know what people already have and what their needs are to try to help them. And the concern is, I think that August 1st is the last date to file with FEMA, and so the clock is ticking.
We have some members of the board who have been awfully quiet today. Brittany, Chris, Dr. Ludi, Robert, do you have any comments or questions? Morgan?
My laptop shut down by itself just now, so I missed a bulk of what Craig was saying. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Nothing to add, but I'm impressed by the work others are doing to support the community.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add, just that I would be interested in exploring what we can do to support a more systemic response. So
Yeah, I would say the same thing. So I'm really proud of the community for coming together. Man, it's been a really ride, as we all have seen. So I'm just really proud and really loving the conversation we're having around this and looking forward to, what we come up with and be able to support those in need.
Kristen?
I was just gonna say, while we're all here, and with the information that Craig just shared and the conversations that just came forward, I can look and see when the next public hearing is, to discuss the 19 million, and we can see who may or may not be able to be present. But in the meantime, we can do a collective letter like we've done in the past with a little bit of time, and everybody can review and have input, and we could just have that in holding. So if we can't be available, we can still make sure our presence is known, in terms of advocacy in that space, if that sounds like, something you all want to do. I'm seeing some yeses. For those of you I can't see, y'all can give me a thumbs up or say, yeah, let's rock with it. That'll be great.
That sounds great. Thank you.
I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm sorry that the chair of that committee, Rasheen Eldridge, had indicated that it was scheduled for June the 30th, but there was a competition with another committee to meet in the Kennedy Room, which is where they have these meetings in 208 of City Hall. And so they were going to have to reschedule. He did not have the date. They are going to supposedly do this monthly, and there will be other opportunities for other ways to kind of weigh in. This is obviously not the only avenue, but it is one avenue, I think.
Thank you so much, Craig.
For those who are not checking the chat, I also want to point out that Craig has kindly put Julian Nick's contact in the chat. So Kristen, you and I can follow up with Julian. And also has offered in another comment some feedback about all the work that members of the team have been doing to get out information to people. And I will shout out Dr. Gary and other members of the Behavioral Health Bureau team, because I have seen them out and about, making sure that partners know what they are doing, what they can offer, how they can partner better, and working, directly with folks who need help and need services, which I don't believe is actually very different than the work that they do every day, regardless of whether it's a tornado, but it certainly is showing up in this moment. And it really struck me that when I read some of the information that Aaron Ford sent out to the board last week, that I think it said 75% of the referrals to behavioral health have been girls under the age of 18, which speaks to me specifically to the unmet needs and the trauma that young people and children especially are facing, who, don't have even as much power as the adults in their lives. So I think one of my questions is, what are the partnerships and the connections that have been made to specifically address the needs of children in this moment, who don't have some of the, stability that people generally would have by being in school. And so I'm just very curious about what thought and what services are being directed. Because from my point of view, from what I know and what I see when I am driving through North City or visiting folks there, people are feeling alone in their trauma. And that's very possibly a question to address in the next meeting. And perhaps Dr. Gary could come and speak to some of that. Yeah. Yeah, in this moment, I'm very glad that we do have a bureau that's focused on behavioral health. Dr. Mati made that a priority, and very clearly that is a huge need before the tornado and certainly now.
So full circle for this, just I say things out loud to make sure I know what my responsibility is leaving this table, is that we will begin to keep our eyes and ears open for public hearing dates. In the meantime, alongside that, we're going to start to develop a collective response as a board. Also, alongside that, find an opportunity for Kara's office, anybody in that administrator or leadership, for us to have an opportunity to talk with them and understand and grow a relationship with them so that we can fulfill our role as an advisory support from the DOH effectively. And I have written down some of the other comments that Craig has shared so they can be widely shared with the board at your reference. And yeah, I wonder if we can even revisit some of the transition plans, as you mentioned, Craig, that Dr. Mahdi had envisioned, and seeing if new administration is willing to discuss that with us so that we can give insight input on what would be helpful in this season to restore and not just hope for the city residents, but also trust. Takes a long time to build trust. So.
Could that be another segue of inviting the mayor to one of our meetings in the future?
April, I'll let you.
No, I think, you know, we had put the ask out there, and then there was a crisis. We are still in a crisis, but the crisis was fresh. And she had just recently taken office. So this is the time to revisit this topic, Chris. So I have that on my list of tasks and follow-ups, and I will report back to the board, and also plan to reach out to Julian Nix also.
Thank you.
Thank you for keeping us focused.
Indeed.
Are there any other comments, questions about this topic right now? Or can we move on to our next agenda item? And we may just have this as a standing agenda item for many future meetings.
Are we still able to, I know Victoria isn't here, but are we still able to touch on the department leadership update?
Not at this time. Unfortunately, she is not able to make it to the meeting, but what I think I can ask for is between now and the next meeting, which I believe is scheduled for August 21st, if there are some topics that we would like to get some, you know, information on prior to the next meeting to help us prep for it, then I can certainly ask for that to be shared in the interim. I don't know that there's been a lot of change in the structure of the team or their areas of focus, but I can certainly find out. And I also will add back the agenda item regarding the budget for the August meeting.
Okay.
Okay. We're going to go ahead and move on to our next agenda item. Thanks everyone for, you know, engaging in so much work. I know folks are doing a lot to support our city, both from an organizational standpoint and also as individuals. Kristen, would you like to take the lead on committee updates?
Sure. I apologize for if you hear the noise in my background. Some homework happening. So yeah, committees, academic institution committee or academic partnership committee, and governance and the community engagement committee. And forgive me if my titles are not accurate. Just trying to think about when is a good time for us to reconvene and have discussions. I know we talked about doing a collective meeting, which I think could be really powerful in terms of us seeing how there's synergy across the sectors, and then doing breakout groups to talk about things that are very specific to, you know, the committees that you lead. The Community Engagement Committee, we have been meeting. We meet monthly, but we did not meet in June. I think it was just a lot going on in terms of tornado response. And so it just felt heavy to meet at the moment. And we did meet this month, and we really just talked about the resources that people need and the resources that we knew of. So it was actually very eye-opening to me, because where I sit, I think sometimes where you sit in a space, you have this overload of maybe resources, but maybe somebody that you're meeting with didn't get to see those same things. So it was good to see what was still needed, what was out there, what people didn't know about. And I think being able to connect in those ways has been helpful. Dr. Lilly does a lot of outreach for the unhoused. And so just understanding what her experience has been, what resources she still needed that maybe myself or Brittany were aware of, that we were able to share. So we were able to do that. In the future, Shantae, I know you used to attend our meetings as your schedule allows. We'd love to have you back to make sure that there's just synergy and us just not doing things, but having alignment with the DOH and making sure our efforts feel supportive to your work. And then I'll open it up for both of the chairs, Inbal and April, who are the chairs of the other committees, to kind of respond on their behalf.
I will briefly say that governance has not met recently, but I do have an update of sorts. For those who don't know how the appointment process works, or you did it a long time ago, folks who want to be on the Board of Health need to go to the website to fill out the application for either the Board of Health or the Board of Hospitals, because of the charter, although we meet as a joint board. And so for quite a while, we've been talking about issuing an all call, asking folks to please, apply, because we had vacancies that we would like to fill. During the transition between mayors, there was a little bit of a gap in who was filling the role of kind of pulling those applications and making sure that the appointments process was moving forward. That is happening again, but there's a backlog. But I am now aware that there are at least 2 people who would like to serve on the Board of Health. I believe one has a background in epidemiology and the other has a background in community health work. And so as soon as I get my hands on those applications, Liz, you, me, and Colleen can meet. And then we can make a recommendation to the board about, officially voting to add these folks to our board or not. But we have 1 vacancy on the Board of Health and 1 vacancy on the Board of Hospitals. And so if we would like to add these couple of folks to the board, then at that point, we would have all of our vacancies closed and the board would be full, and we would all be serving within the appropriate time frame of a normal term, which probably hasn't happened in quite a while on this joint board. So that is my update.
Quick update from Academic Public Health Partnership, Collaboration Community, whatever it is. Sorry. We haven't met. We were in the midst of deciding what the charge is. This is a unique board or subcommittee, particularly because we have people who are not on the Board of Health. And so while I've heard from you, Morgan, that you want to meet, we don't actually have a charge. And so we want to wait to meet on purpose. And so one of the challenges that we don't have a purpose per se. We had a lot of, here's what was happening. We had a lot of discussion on MOUs, and we had those. We can continue having those meetings. I think that would be fine. I just don't know that it's as meaningful as people would want. So that's where we stand.
What was the most recent charge for the academic committee?
I mean, Chris, I have no idea. It's been like a collective of faculty at different institutions across St. Louis, and we've been working to provide internships and support for the Department of Health. And Dr. Monti, to a very valid and important point, had said, particularly for internships, we want long-term internships, and none of the universities have been able to translate that into action. And she continued to make, what is the word I'm looking for? Like, chances to do it differently, but, she continued to ask for long-term and then saying, okay, here's a short-term opportunity. It's a really good opportunity, but I think it's more disruptive for the Board of Health, and not the Board of Health, for the health department. I think it's really challenging to hurry up and train somebody and then have them leave within 8 weeks. It's devastating, I think. And so I have said I don't want to do that to any staff, let alone a training, on the training side. I think we need to do better as academic institutions, and I'm working on that at St. Louis University, but I can't change it for everybody. Craig, please.
Yeah. And I probably haven't given enough help, but I do help to serve on that committee. And as Dr. Shaka mentioned, there's been a lot of different fits and starts in the past. There was an academic health department. There still is in sort of name and some activities. I know this was this was with SLU, St. Louis County, St. Louis City. I might be leaving somebody out, but and so some of this has morphed into lots of opportunities, Chris, Dr. Daly. There's we have this community health improvement plan, but the question is, so how do we really do this? And there's a lot of academic individuals who are very skilled, and part of the issue that sometimes comes up, at least this is my view, it's not greatly rewarded sometimes. It's publish or perish. I think there's some movement from that to try to value that. So the significance of having people and their interns and so forth on the academic side providing some of that research that would connect up with the practical day-to-day public health activity, and then obviously the great information and experience that people who are doing public health every day could bring into the classroom and so forth is kind of the ideal. But how one does that with many different academic institutions that St. Louis is blessed with sometimes becomes a bit challenging. And so just kind of fitting into one sort of thing. There's been talk, for instance, and I don't know how this really works, but even then, obviously with community, there's been some of the efforts with mosquitoes to try to do some of that scientific effort with Missouri Botanical and others to engage community. So for instance, the idea right now, and I'm thinking about the practicality of this, is mosquito lands on you. My immediate reaction is to slap it, right? But the idea would be to take a picture of that before you slap it so that you can see if that was Oedipus aegyptus or whatever that is, so that we could decide whether we have I don't know if you could decide whether it was male or female. That would be difficult, but to decide whether or not you really wouldn't want to spray to kill mosquitoes, because you're also then impacting other insects that are helpful and whatnot. So there's a lot of different efforts one could engage in, and we just haven't really landed on something, I think, that would be that definite charge.
Oh, Craig, but I mean,
Yeah.
these projects are happening regardless of
Sure,
whether the
yeah.
committee is working. So the mosquito alert has been functioning for several years. It's a great collaboration with with MOBA and City Health Department, but like, and what we wanted to do was this larger effort, and maybe we don't need the larger effort. So to that point, maybe the academic health department had been a really great resource that was funded to really serve as like, we're going to help, provide expertise when needed, and then do an emergency response to topics, not like this was pre-COVID. And then with COVID, it actually was a very good structure that channeled a lot of the support that primarily at that time it was SLU in that channel, but there was lots of other academic interactions and interventions that we're helping collectively. So if we, I think the question is long term, what do we want to invest our time? And, faculty are busy, but also this is a part of their service. And so that is not a problem, I think, in my perspective, as a full professor and not looking nowhere to get promoted to.
Yeah, if I can just chime in that I think that there's a lot of interest, at least at Wash U. We have a new school of public health, and you know, I guess my question is just, well, what needs to happen for us to, clarify what our charge is? And, I would love for us to try and imagine actual, projects, not one-off things like, oh, an internship, short-term internship, but, maybe bigger in scope and more sustainable collaborative opportunities for the various different institutions. I'm at WashU, so that's what I know. But a lot of my colleagues, including pre-tenure, I'm pre-tenure myself, would love the opportunity to get engaged. It's just figuring out how to organize that in ways that are mutually beneficial, of course.
So could these be topics for the next committee meeting for the academic committee?
I was going to ask, when does the committee meet?
It doesn't routinely meet. It meets like once every 2 months. And we need to assess who is our external partner still. I would encourage us not to create a program that doesn't get support from the health department. If we're not helping the health department do its work, then we're not doing our job. So if we want, I think I can talk to Victoria and see how she would want to be a part of this, but I'm not in the place to do that. Yeah. I don't want to. I think Victoria is probably doing a lot in ways that she did not sign up for, and asking her to do more and thinking about a longer term sustainable plan when she's not going to be the director is not really fair. So I'm happy to meet and schedule a meeting. How about that? I'll schedule a meeting.
Definitely, I'd love to be a part of the committee too. So I'd definitely love to be at that meeting too. Thank you, Dr. Shackham.
Thanks.
Would it be helpful in the meantime to maybe just kind of distribute a shared document of thoughts of like where we feel like we can be supportive, or how we can reframe or reimagine what the committee could be? I know that it would take still some conversations with leadership, but I didn't know how we can support you all in those efforts of like, kind of redefining the role.
I mean, I think that would be a great first step, sort of collate ideas, at least from us. And of course, with the understanding that this then needs to be a conversation with the department. But it is at least a place to start. But, it's a good point that we are in a place of transition. I just don't want that to prevent us from, trying to move forward and being in a good position to be able to offer ideas once we do have an established director. But yeah, I think it's important to keep that in mind, though, that we're in transition. So a Google Doc of some kind, I think that's a great first step.
I agree with Morgan.
And who would be drafting that?
I can.
Did someone just say something? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't mind like kind of just initiating it. I think I can do that as I send out some of the notes that I collected today and just also send a shareable document that everyone has access to and can comment in. Just in the meantime, I don't like no pressure, but as we're thinking, maybe if an idea comes up and you're like, oh, this could be a good idea, to just have some place where it lands.
Thank you.
And did we want to have a collective meeting? Does that feel like a good next step, Dr. Stackham, when you think about still in the season of transition, or would it make more sense for us to kind of just continue to brainstorm and reimagine?
I think that an important point is that a collective meeting for our version of the academic health department subcommittee is fine, except I don't think it would be fair to ask the members who are outside of our Board of Health to participate. So I don't know that it would actually make much sense. I hadn't thought about that in that scope. I thought we were going to have a collective meeting to really identify with the director at the time to say, okay, these are the things we're going to do together, and then split out the tasks. But we sort of got there. But yeah, I mean, I think this document's going to be somewhat helpful, and I'm not sure how to operationalize it, but it's fine. I was given the chair position as a parting gift from Tim McBride, so I'm not sure that I need to keep it either. So just as an FYI, you're coming for it, take it, but you have to know that there's a whole lot of other people coming with it. And so finding a space to make sure everybody is participating in the way they want and can.
That's a really, really good point in terms of like having the other partners that are not a part of the board who do show up for those meetings. So I really like what you said. Maybe we can do the document, but the meeting with the director is probably going to be most important. And being sensitive to the timing of that.
Yeah. I mean, I think we can still ask to meet with Victoria and say, hey, we want to do this. Does this, just as some ideas moving forward? I don't know, they have to be heavy in like detail.
Sure. Like that.
Yeah, and a piece of this, by the way, is happening, just like Dr. Shakam talked about some of the other things that are continuing to happen. So there's a learning system for development of staff and so forth, and some of those efforts are moving forward as well, which is part of that effort, as was identified, to be supportive of staff, and what are those kind of things that could do that. And so we don't necessarily have all of that infrastructure, and some of that is being developed on the academic side to support the professional training of staff. So those things, those pieces are there. I know one of the things that it seems like all of the community health improvement plan action teams are wrestling with is, how do we address the lack of access to healthcare that is specifically going to be happening in 2008, but pieces of that happening before that, as some of the efforts to unravel Medicaid funding and even deal with the Affordable Care Act are coming into place. So there's a lot of things that could happen, but
Thank you all.
A quick question. When is the next committee meeting?
It has not yet been set,
Okay.
but I will add you to the email that I send to Liz and Colleen to canvas for a time.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or updates on committees? All right, hearing none, I'm going to move us to our last agenda item, which is to talk about board priorities. Granted, we only have about 15 minutes left, and this is more than a 15-minute agenda item. But when the year started, we collectively talked about how we can advocate and have a unified front as a board to help public health elevate in terms of its budget and its it being seen as one of the most essential government agencies. We also talked about making sure that our committees had some structure and some guidance, and I think we are still obviously focused on both of those topics. A priority, though, that I think is new or maybe has changed in focus is the conversation around what health equity means in this moment. I believe that we should keep of course health equity at the center of the work that we are doing as a board in terms of who and what we are going to advocate for, but also in both the Department of Health's work to help folks recover and respond to the tornado, and also how other agencies or other parts of our city government can help to augment the work that the Department of Health is doing, or vice versa. Because one of the things that this meeting specifically has called out is that there's a lack of information that we might have around what is the whole of government doing to support residents in this moment. I'm sure there's a lot we don't know. And it also seems that there are things that could be strengthened to support a more equitable and systemic way of interacting with residents to understand what people need and want, and then helping the department either figure out better, different ways of accomplishing that if there's a need, or offering our expertise, partnerships, and connections to help the department staff accomplish their work. So those are the three areas that I think are priorities still, in terms of advocacy, health equity, and the committee work that we need to do to help us stay organized with our function. But I look forward to hearing from others if you have other areas that you think we should focus on, or want to offer some feedback on the three items that I've just named.
Thank you for providing that, April. And I know I brought that up. Just wanted to see what our direction was and kind of something we can use and share with the mayor as well. So thank you for sharing that, but I don't have anything to add.
To piggyback off Dr. Daly, I would say the things that you mentioned, and I think the things that we've discussed here today and prior to today, is I think what's critically important is relationship with the administration and leadership, so that our efforts can feel in sync and in lockstep with the Department of Health. So I think those are great next steps of making leadership aware that we're here, what we're able to do. Maybe there's some things now that they just haven't had the opportunity to share where we can offer supportive insights. And so I think having those meetings as soon as possible, which definitely depends on their capacity, but would be really important for us to really hone in on priorities. We still know that federal cuts are happening. So, I mean, any opportunity we get to advocate for public funding, or not public funding, but funding to support the Department of Health, I think is always one we can kind of keep in motion. Because there's a lot of transitions that are happening at the federal level that will deeply impact communities that we serve. I think those would be the only other things I think that would be helpful in us determining our priorities. And of course, for instance, like the Community Engagement Committee, making sure that we have time and space with Shantae to see what her experience is as a lead of that work as a department employee, and making sure our efforts are supportive of that too. So I think those connections with the department can help us refine and or make our stance more firm in supporting their priorities, which in part are our priorities too.
Thank you, Kristen.
Do we think that it may be an idea to create a strategic plan around this?
I don't know actually that we need a strategic plan when there's a strategic plan that the Department of Health has. I think
Okay.
what our function as a board is to be clear how our work can inform or support the plan that the department is working through. I feel like having a new strategy or a kind of like shadow strategy actually wouldn't be helpful to the work that the Department of Health is leading.
I agree.
What are everyone else's thoughts? Brittany, I don't think we've heard from you. Robert, do you have any thoughts?
I was actually thinking, I was putting in the chat just now, going back to Chris's point and kind of a little bit around what Morgan was uplifting. Perhaps it's not a strategic plan, and maybe some goals and outcomes from our group and or the committees that is in alignment with the city department's strategic plan that might be helpful for us and kind of providing some direction or direct action plan for us in particular.
I agree.
Thank you for, I think maybe offering the pathway for us to get more clear about what does it look like to support or to advise the strategy. And from what you said, Brittany, it really makes me think about how we track our work, and that we need to have some form where we can better document the efforts that we are, undertaking, and what our goals are.
Yes. You hit it right on the nose, April. And could you send us the priorities you talked about earlier?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I'm not hearing any additional feedback. Are there any announcements?
I would like to shout out Shantae and the outreach team with the City Health Department. We had a collaboration event with Hyde Park Community Collaborative, I want to say last month, I believe. And I really appreciated Shantae and the team for being willing to come out and support and represent the city health department. And it was a really good turnout for a community. And I know specifically with Hyde Park, the responses I've been receiving is them feeling a bit isolated and wanting to be more supported by the health department and also the Affinia Healthcare in particular. But I think this was a great step to working towards building that connection and relationship with them.
We were happy to help. Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Anyone else? Well, I definitely want to take this last minute to just offer deep gratitude to the staff at the Department of Health. It's been a pretty wild couple of months in the midst of a transition in leadership and, of course, a tornado. And I know everyone, as always, is working their butts off. But in this moment, I think what has been clear to me is that folks work in the Department of Health because they truly care about the people in this city, even when they could take other roles somewhere else, they stay. And I know so many people are thinking every day about how they can do their work either better or do more of it to serve more people. And so I thank you all. And please share with your colleagues that the work folks are doing is being recognized. It is seen. I am hearing from lots of partners around town that they appreciate y'all. And so I just hope that everyone knows that we have a lot of gratitude for the talent that this team brings to public health in our city. Well, folks, that concludes our meeting. It is 9:27 and I'm going to officially call this meeting adjourned. Thank you all.